So welcome everyone to cost management training for Unify. My name's Simon Day. I'm the head of consulting for Unify, and I'll be running these training sessions that we're doing. Just want to give you a brief overview of what we're covering. So this training session is for cost management training is made up of 3 parts. Part 1, which we're doing today, looks at creating budgets and then setting up contracts. In part 2, we focus on contract administration. So that includes managing the contract, dealing with variations, dealing with payment claims, retention, other items like that. And then in part 3, we look at cash flow. Now, in all of this, we'll be looking at how all this information is connected and integrated in Unify, so it's all related, but it's also designed to help you to understand how to set up a project in Unify, how to get it going and get cost reporting happening, and to do all these activities. Okay, so today we're going to start off with creating a project. So let's bring up. So I'm assuming that everyone is all happily logged in. So to create, well, before we get into creating a project, I'll just give you a bit of a guide to navigating in Unify. So Unify is a project and portfolio management platform, and it's made up of a whole lot of functions that we call modules that are integrated and give you reporting on your projects, your programs, and your portfolio through that integration and through aggregating that data up from the modules up to the level that you want to see it. So across the top here, we have the modules that we're going to be playing around in. So today we're going to be doing stuff in the summary module. That's where we set up projects. We'll be looking at the costs module, which is where we control our budgets and do our cost reporting, and getting on to the contracts module, which is where we set up our contracts. We'll also touch a little bit on resources and a little bit on documents. And we'll be dipping our toe into some of the other modules in later sessions. But the focus for this training session is really the costs and the contracts module. We're going to be delving into that functionality in quite a bit of detail over these 3 training sessions. So that's the module across the top there. There's a search function there, which allows you to search the information that's on screen for that particular module. To the left here is the menu. When I click on that, it will display. There's another link here to all the modules and links to reporting. Now I'm logged in as an administrator, so I get a whole lot of extra stuff here as an administrator, which you may or may not be in your home deployment of Unify. But in this one, you will get access to reports, so you can see what's going on there. And I'm just going to click on this one here for the Power BI dashboard. So this is going to give us an embedded Power BI dashboard. And this is just an example project, but you can see here, this is, if you like, a potential, end outcome report for all the activity we're going to be doing over these 3 weeks of training. We've got a project here. We can see the relative value of the progress claims that have been done on this project. Here's some information about variations, the source of variations proportionally. some gauges there measuring progress against budget, and our cash flow S-curve there, the budget, the actuals, and the forecast. So this is all being fed from the information that we're going to be playing around in and creating over the next 3 weeks. The next level below that, which is the dark blue, is the filter level. Now, the main filter here is the project filter. I click in here, I get a list of projects. I can scroll down to find my project, or I can start typing a project name. I just start typing any project name, and it will search on that project name. And then I can select the project name and it will take me into it. But I'll just jump out of that for the moment. To the right, we've got this menu here, which we call the modal. I click on that. This gives me my portfolio filters. Now, in this particular deployment, these have been set up to be sectors, project types, service lines, locations, and then life cycle and my role. So these ones may be labeled differently in your deployment, or they might be the same as this, but these are a way of breaking up all the projects, well, not breaking them up, actually a way of aggregating all the projects for reporting purposes. So I here can say, show me all the projects in the aged care sector, apply that filter, and now I'm looking at the aged care projects in this particular deployment. So in this portfolio, these are the aged care projects, or I can, change that to be, the commercial projects. Within that, we can have project types. So this one's got new build or refurbishment, but this list can be as long or as short as you need it. Here, then we've got service lines as well. So, we can see what service lines happening, and then locations. As you can see here, we've got a bunch of different locations, and all of these can be applied as filters. And when we have a filter applied, we see we have a little chip here that tells me I'm now looking at the commercial sector for this particular portfolio. Now, these filters apply to all the reports out of Unify. So you get to define what they are in your deployment, or your system administrator does. So these will be tailored to what your business needs in your Unify deployment. And then that flows through to all your reports. So any information that we have at a project level, so in this case, we're going to do budgets this morning after we create projects, you would be able to aggregate that up to a portfolio level with these filters. And we can see this in the Unify here. So for instance, if I go now to the costs module and change this view here to this set of codes, the information I'm getting on screen here, including these embedded graphs, are all the commercial sector. So if you like, what I'm looking at here is a total budget there for the commercial sector. There's my approved budget column here of, $2.6 billion. As you can see, there's quite a lot of money being spent on lawn bowls clubs. So, yeah, in addition to, well, by categorizing projects, we can aggregate data and get reporting and slice and dice that reporting, both within Unify and also in the output reports, which we will look at. So that's the filter level. I'll go back here to the summary level. The gray band below that we call the sub-navigation. This gives you different views within this particular module. So in the summary module, when you're here in all projects, you get the dashboard, tasks, and sign-off, and we'll see what some of these things do as we progress. But as we go into different modules, we'll see when these ones appear. So if I pick a project here, I then get these additional ones to navigate into. So this is looking at different views of information and functions within a particular module. And then we sometimes also get filters within a particular view. So we're able to filter this information down here with these filters. And buttons for doing things. So it's, filters for changing a view. and buttons for doing stuff. So what we want to do is start by doing stuff, which is to create a project. Now, I'm here in the summary module. I can kill that filter there just by clicking on that X to get rid of it. And I'm now going to create a new project. So I'm going to click on the big shiny yellow button that says new project. And I get my project creation form here. Not going to worry about a project ID. Doesn't really matter for this particular training deployment, but in your Unify deployment, the most common thing is that Unify will generate a project ID for you. And so when you create a new project, that will get assigned automatically based on whatever business rules you have for project IDs. So I'm going to create a project name. I'd like you to create a project as well. Please give your project some kind of wacky or at the very least unique name. There we are. A bit of spell checking there. So that's the name of my project. To give it a bit of a theme to current events, I'm then going to select a sector. So I'm going to say this is a commercial sector project. Project type, let's say it's a new build. Service line, I'm doing this as part of my project management service line, so I'm going to select project management. And the location, well, this is definitely in Melbourne. And the current phase, here I'll go with, let's say it's a concept design as a current project. Now, you can select whatever you like for any of those, but yeah, please give yourself a nice, unique project name. Be as creative or as straightforward as you wish to be. So scrolling down further, you'll see here, we've got a link here to a parent project. So we can group projects together to create programs, or to break a project out into stages. So we might have the parent project as the overall project, and then, you know, stage 1 is a child project, stage 2 is a child project. And this allows us to, you know, report on them as a single project or broken down into the levels that we need to break them down into, with what we call parent and child projects in Unify. We're not going to do that today, so we'll leave that parent project blank for the moment. And then we scroll down. You can give this a project description if you like. And then we come down to the resources. So what I want you to do here is add yourself as a resource to this project. Now, the reason you need to do that is by adding resources to projects, we control who can access and edit this project. So I'm going to search for myself. There I am. And put myself in the role of project manager. And I'd like you to do the same thing for yourself. So there I am. I've allocated myself in the role of project manager. This gives me editing rights to this project. So the idea here is that you want to control in Unify who can edit particular projects, and you want that to be the team working on the project and primarily the project manager. So we want to, if you don't assign yourself to this project, you won't be able to edit this project. You'll be able to create it and then not edit it again. So very important to assign yourself. The next thing I want you to do, once you've assigned yourself in the role of project manager, is to assign me in the role of project director. Now, I'm just going to pick one of you to be my project director. Lee, you're coming up on the top of my list for some reason, so congratulations, you're my project director.
Did you add another person?
Yep, so I'm just selecting add resource.
Okay, so you've got to hit save first?
Yes, yep, add resource, do that, save it, and then add resource to get the next person.
Okay.
Now, the next person.
What are you going to be? Project director.
Project director, yep. So the next person I'm going to add is my client. Now, my client here is the infamous Clive McClive of Clive World Enterprises, not based on any real person. Bit of a nightmare client, but you know, if you get him in the right mood, you can make a lot of money with variations with him. So, so I'm going to add him into the role of client. Now you can use Clive as your client here too, or you can search the resource pool for anyone. You just, you know, so if I start typing, you know, David, I'll get a whole lot of people called Dave or David. You can add one of them as your client. The other thing you can do here as well is you can create a resource. So if I hit create resource, I can put in someone's name and their email address and link them to an existing organization and all the rest of it. But let's just play around with what's there for today. Just use the add resource and search for someone, put them in the role of client. Feel free to use Clive or someone else from Clive World Enterprises. And the other person I'm going to put in is my architect. And I've got this firm here called ABC Architects. And as you see, there's a bunch of people here from ABC Architects. I'm going to go with Lisa McSpanner. I'm going to put her in the role of architect. So you can pick a different consultant or other role there. Feel free to use Lisa, that's fine. And so I just want, you know, a short list of people. But the main thing is to have yourself as the project manager and me in as the project director for this And once you've got that list populated, select create project. And your project will now exist. You'll get something that looks something a bit like this. All right, so we're now going to move on to using cost structures. So we use cost structures to create budgets in Unify and also to then measure progress against that budget with, you know, contracts and forecasts and understanding what our performance is against that budget. So we're in our project here. Here's my mass production facility that I just created. So I'm now going to move from the summary module across to the costs module. And when I'm in the costs module here, in the dashboard, and you'll see it's blank, there's no information for this project, but I've got a list here of a whole lot of different cost codes. So each one of those is a different cost structure. Now, for most of this training, we're going to be playing around in the post-contract cost structure, but just to start off with right now, we're going to play with the blank cost structure. Now, this one is still blank, so there's no information here yet. So we're going to move to the budget subnav. And again, if you didn't select it before, select the blank code now. And what we've got here is basically just one line here, project. And I think for the budget, now I can build up a budget using quantity, unit, and rates, or I can put just a total amount in. Say my budget is 50 million. I just type in 50 million. and hit save, and there we are. There's 50 million. But I don't have any kind of breakdown of this at all. And the idea with using a blank cost code is that you can create what we call a set of project-specific codes. So where you have a breakdown or a budget structure or a cost structure that is unique to this project. So to create that, I come across here to the right of project budget, and I might just zoom in slightly for this so it's a bit more visible. And you'll see there's an arrow here, and if I hover on that, it says add, edit subcodes. So I click on that, and this gives me this particular interface here to create budget subcodes. Now, I'm going to call them code 100, and I'm just making stuff up here at the moment. So I've thrown in 4 subcodes here that I've making, that are going to make up my budget. And I can now, I've zoomed in just a little too much with this one. So I can now put in budgets at this level, or I can drill down further and add a 3rd level to this. So I've got this thing here for contingency. I'm actually going to drill down here and do 401 design contingency and 402 construction contingency. And these ones, because these are contingency codes, I'm going to tick this is contingency box here, which will treat these budget items as contingency, which means I won't be able to spend them directly. They'll be, I can be draw down on them as contingency. Now,
so how did you go into the breakdown more?
So I picked level 400 here, and on the right, I clicked on this, drill in further. So I'm now looking at 400 contingency subcodes, and these are now being, created as codes at this level. So if I go up, I then go up again to look at everything. What I've got now here, over on the right, I've got my depth filter here. I'm looking at this as being depth level 1, but I've now got 3 levels of codes here. So if I change my depth to level 3, I'll now see that I've got these 4 header codes of base building consultants, mask equipment and contingency. And then under level 400, I've got level 3. And the way the budget's created in Unify is everything goes from the bottom level up. So this one is currently 50 million, because I threw in 50 million here. Let's say this is 35 million. Consultants, let's go 5 million. Complicated mask equipment, 8 million, and then contingency. I can't put it in this level here because I've got this next level down. I've got to put it in the lowest level. So if I hit save, that's now 48. And let's say I've got 500,000 and 1.5 million. So I've now broken down that 50 million into these items. Now I can add as many levels as I need with this. So I can keep going down and down and down and down. So have a bit of a play with that. And create a structure of your own. And when we're done with that, we'll move on to using a standard cost structure. All right, so we've had fun playing around with that. I say fun, I presume you've had fun creating our own budget structure. What we're going to do now is use a predefined budget structure here. So we're going to change to this one here called post-contract. And this is a 3-level structure here, which I can tell by checking the depths here, 1, 2, 3. So level 1 is the project, level 2 are these header codes, and level 3 are the detail codes. So we can, enter a budget against any of these codes and build up our budget for this project. Now, there is a budget I prepared earlier for you. If you right-click on the Issues module and open it in a new tab, go to All Projects, sorry, go to not all projects, but there's a project called Chelsea Point. In Chelsea Point, you'll find an issue that says download the budget file. And hopefully you'll see this file attachment here. If you click on that to download it, what we're going to do is we're going to upload this budget. So this budget here, when the file's downloaded, looks like this. So you should have this spreadsheet. And as you can see, this has got, the same codes that we've got in the same structure. The other thing it's got too, if you're familiar with this in Excel, is a named range. So you can create, if you've got existing budgets that you want to upload into Unify, what you're able to do is to go into your project. So I'm back here on my project in the budget screen. If I hit export here, what that does is give me a blank Excel file of this budget. So if I just open that, it's that. Right, so I can then, copy and paste my existing budget or do some mapping and formulas to get it in against this structure and then use this to upload it into Unify. So the idea is to give you a way to get budgets into Unify quickly. But I've provided you with a budget with this Excel file, which is in that issue against the Chelsea Point project for you to download. So once you've downloaded it, what I'd like you to do is, instead of clicking the export button, click the import button, click on browse, find where you've saved it on your, select that budget to upload, hit import, and you should get this budget here. So we've got a budget for 65.676 million or thereabouts. So now all this has done is uploaded this file for us to, play around with. To set this as the budget for the project, we need to save a snapshot. So you'll see there's a snapshot button here. When I click on that, I get to give it a snapshot description. So I'm going to call this original estimate. We give it a snapshot date. So I'm just giving it today's date. We can give it a snapshot as the snapshots belong to the life cycle. So we'll always know that this was the original budget as it was at the concept design phase. And I've got my original flag ticked here, which will mean that this particular budget that I saved will become the original budget for the project. And we'll look at what that means in a moment. And then there's also this flag here, which is the approved one. So I'm also going to tick that to make this the approved budget for the project. And then I hit save. Now, when I go to the dashboard, I'm actually just going to do that again. So snapshot here, I selected concept design. I actually want to select whole of project. So we can have budgets set for different life cycle phases, but here we're just going to do whole of project. So, and this is telling me it already exists, but I'm basically saving over my snapshot one. So what this is doing now is populating, and I'll just make this level 2 so we get just the summary codes. So it's taken this snapshot, this budget that I've uploaded it, and it's now flagged this as being the original budget for the project, but also the approved budget, so the current budget position. And so I've done that by using that snapshot flag of original and approved. Now, let's just say the budget changes from this position for whatever reason. I can come back into the budget here, go back to looking at level 3 so I can edit things. Let's say we've looked at it again and we're reducing the value of the early works by $2 million. So I'm just going to, actually, before I do that, what I'm going to do is, because I'm going to be editing this budget, as I'm editing it, I want to see the effect this is having on my current position. So I can use the compare to function here. So there's my original estimate here, which is my approved budget currently and my original budget. So when I select that as the compare to, you'll see that now appears here in this compare to column. And if I was to, I'm just going to delete that and take $2 million out of this budget here by changing that value there to 4.7 million and hit save, that's showing me there that I've removed that 2 million. So it's showing there's a variance on that line item. Now, it's early days. I still think we're going to spend the money. So I'm actually going to put that money back into the main works. I've just reduced the size of the early works for whatever reason, but increased the size of the main works. So we can see that there's a change in that allocation for that budget. Now, the other thing I want to change here is that we have massively underestimated the fee for the project manager, and I'm going to increase that. Let's just say make that 725. So that's gone up by 600 grand. But again, it's early days on this project. And when I come down here, I'm going to take the balance of that money out of contingency. So I'm going to reduce that by 600 grand. So overall, my total project budget isn't going to change. I've reallocated some funds here and I've reallocated some funds around here. Now, you can have a play around and change and reallocate things as much as you like. But if you do it, comparing it to the very first snapshot that you saved, you can see the effect that this will have. Once you've done that, click on save as you go to see what happens. But once you've done that, you hit snapshot. This should come up with version 2 or version 3, depending on how many snapshots you've done so far. I'm just going to call this my revised budget, snapshot it today. It's for the whole of the project. I'm not going to change my original budget because what I had there originally is still important. I want to compare to it, but this is now going to become my approved budget. So I tick that flag and hit save. And now when I go back to my dashboard, those changes that I was looking at before in editing my budget have now flowed through to my dashboard reporting. I can see main works has increased by 2 million, early works is reduced. Budget allocation for project manager is up by 600 grand and contingency is down by 600 grand. So my total budget hasn't changed. They're both at the top and the bottom. It's the same, but I've reallocated funds within that budget. So that's what the snapshot function does. It gives you the ability to snapshot a budget at a point in time. And by using the original and or the approved flags, we can be reporting on that through our budget position here in our cost dashboard, and also in any output reports that we produce as well. Now, in some deployments of Unify, we have clients who have controls over budget changes, and you need to do a budget change request to get that budget done, that budget change done. You can't just tick the box and say, you know, here is the you know, the budget. So in that case, you create a document to do this. Now, we can create this document anyway in this deployment to look at that. But I'll just give you a moment now to have a play around with that before we go and create that document. All right, so we've got our original budget and our approved budget. What we're going to do now is go to the Documents module. And we're going to create our first document. To create this is going to be called a budget status document. But if you were doing a budget change request, it would be an identical process to this. So I click on New, and this will launch my Create New Document wizard in Unify here. And there's a list of templates here, and I want you to select the second one on the list, which is called Budget Status. And when you do that, you'll see on the right here that this document has a sign-off built into it. And this was the reason I got you to put me in as the project director. And in this case, Lee's my project director. So this is telling you that you know, this document will require these sign-offs. So we're going to have a look at how the sign-off process works with Unify. But the rest of this we don't need to touch because we know what project we're in, and we can rename the document at the end of the process. So as long as you select Budget Status as the template, select Create, and this will launch us into the document itself. Now, when you're creating documents in Unify, what you're given is a little workflow here with a series of steps. And at each of those steps, a couple of things can happen. One, it can be something where Unify is getting information from your project and populating it into the document, which is what we've got here in this first step. So you'll see that this chart of account is set to post-contract, which is the one that we're using. And what we want to do here, though, is go to where it says version, and we're going to select our approved budget here. And the compare to, we're going to select the original budget. So that process that we did of comparing the two, we're basically putting into this document. Now, this has got lots and lots of columns, so I'm just going to untick the quantity unit rate columns because I don't need those in my final document. I just want to present the totals and the percentages, because the percentages give you a nice, you know, breakdown of what percentage of the budget is given to what thing. So I can see this one, the construction budget is 83% and consultants are 10 and client cost is 1% and so on. So this is basically, in this column here is, you know, if this was being, so if we were doing the process I talked about where when you save a snapshot, you can't just tick it as approved because you need to go through an approval process for it to either set up a budget or to do a budget change, because that is one way that Unify can be configured. You will be creating a document that's identical to this. And in the version one here, you select the budget that you will be getting approved. So in this case, it's our revised budget. And in the compare to, you're comparing to the original or the whatever the current approved position is. So in this case, we're comparing to the original. And this, you know, runs through it line by line with this information. And when I'm happy with that, I can either click on step 2 or scroll down and do save and continue. So I'm just going to save and continue here. So this takes me through to this one here, which again is pulling information in from what's in Unify. And this is a cost report format here. Now, at the moment, we've only got the budget information in here because we haven't started populating the rest of this, which we're going to be getting to. And then the third step is the accounting costs. Now, this is telling me there's no information, and that's correct because we haven't done anything with any cash flow yet, because that's in session 3 in 2 weeks' time. So we expect this one to be blank. Now, I don't want this blank thing to be in my document. So I can click on this little eyeball icon here, which says hide step. So there's no information in this at the moment. I don't want to use it. I've just hidden that from my document. Then I do save and continue. And I've got this summary one here. So this is where I can, you know, write something as to why we're making this budget change for the information of the people who are going to have to approve this. So this step here, this is, you know, Unify's word processor. And you can, you know, type away to your heart's content to do something here. Just a couple of little things in here. There's a spell check icon, which you can turn on your spell checker. Fortunately, no spell checking problems with me at the moment. If you're copying text in from another source, then there's a little icon here that says paste as plain text, and you can paste that text in to here. Copying and pasting in directly from other sources into here without using paste as plain text can lead to problems with formatting and with generating PDF documents. So we always recommend that you paste as plain text. Particularly if you've got something in Microsoft Word and you paste it directly in here. Microsoft Word is XML, we're in a HTML environment, the two are not completely compatible. So you can end up with problems and documents not being able to generate a PDF of the document. So if you use the plain text paste, that won't be a problem. So you can write your justification for this. I do save and continue, and I get to my finish step. So this finish step is where we do document control in Unify, and it's very simple. I can rename the document if I want to, or I can use the default name. This name can also have some business rules in it to auto-populate a document name based on project information as well. I can change the status of my document. So what I'd like you to do when you get to this is change your document to be awaiting sign-off. And that will put this document into an approval workflow, which we'll have a look at in a moment. So that's all I'm going to do here. I'm just going to put this as awaiting sign-off. And then I'm going to hit close. And this disappears. Now, when I click on documents here to reload the documents module, I can see here that this document is here. And if I click on it, what I'll see here is that there's my budget comparison with that information. There's my cost report. And here is where it's awaiting sign off. Now, if this is your document and you're happy with it, you can add your signature to it. So I add my signature. There we are. That's signed off electronically by myself. But because Lee hasn't signed it off yet, the document status, as we see up here, is still awaiting sign-off. Now, what I'm going to do now is go back to the summary module here, go into all projects, and while I'm waiting for you guys to finish off your documents, I'm going to click on this sign-off thing here, because what I'm expecting to see is a bunch of documents start appearing here that require my signature. And there we are, Dubbo test project. Excellent. Here's Michael's project. I can review this. I'm happy with his changes to his budget, signed off. Refresh that. That one drops off my list. Here we are. Signed off. And so on. And Lee's one signed off. So with sign-offs like that, so that's one way when users who are, higher up the chain than you need to sign things off, they can come here into the summary module and see that sign off and work through, review the documents, sign them off. The other thing that happens is we can set up an email notification that when the document gets to their level of delegation, because we didn't have any delegations here, we just had roles signing them off, but we can have delegated roles. So someone can sign up a budget off to a certain level. If it's a value above that, it needs to go higher up the chain. That can all be set up for any sign off. And they will then receive an email notification that they have documents awaiting sign off. They click on the link in that, it takes them into the document, they review it, they sign it off. So we can ping and annoy people with that as well. So just look at where we're at. So we've imported a budget from Excel, we've snapshot that budget, and we've looked at doing a budget change. So now we're going to create a contract. So I've got too many tabs open. I better close them off. Go back into my project here. And I'm now going to go across to the contracts module, because that's where I'm going to create a contract. Hopefully that's nice and self-evident. So I'm just clicking around like crazy here. So in the contracts module, to create a contract, I click on this add button. You'll see that this add or create button is quite common, and it's usually that yellow color there to make it stand out. This gives me my contract creation form. Now, as you see, this is reasonably similar to the project creation form we had earlier. So I select my type of contract. Now, this is going to be a cost contract. So Unify handles both cost and revenue, but today this is cost management training. We're just dealing with cost. And what I'm going to set up here is the contract for my architect on this. I'm going to start creating that contract. So the contract name, I like to put in the service that's being provided. So this is going to be for the architectural design services. I can capture a purchase order here, or that's if the purchase order is being issued by another system. If you're using Unify as your purchase order system, you obviously don't need to do that. The customer here is Clive. He's my client that we're managing this contract for him on behalf of. And the supplier here is going to be Lisa from ABC Architects, which is why I added her before. But I don't have to select her. I can just search for ABC Architects here. And you'll see, like, if I choose ABC, I got ABC Construction, ABC Architects. I could select anyone else. So I'm searching the whole resource pool of contacts that exists in Unify already, in the resources module, which we haven't really touched on today. But, there's Lisa McSpanner. I could select any one of these other people, but I'm just going to go with Lisa as the supplier. Status of this contract is pending. I'm going to leave that as pending for the moment. And we've got fields here to capture awarded dates, commencement dates, and practical completion dates. Now, these you can use as you see fit, but they are typically used for construction contracts where you're going to then be managing extensions of time, and knowing these dates is critical to that. For other projects, they're not critical. You can use them or not use them. Contract standards, you see we've got a bunch of AS standards listed here. These can be useful because we can have different, when we get into contract administration, different documents that we will produce or different templates that relate to different contract standards. For example, you know, when you're issuing a variation for one type of contract or one contract standard, you may need to use very different wording to another type of contract. So it may even, you know, some contract standards refer to variations as contract sum adjustments. Some call them variations, and you would want to have things aligned with that. So you can design your templates in Unified to be aligned with your contract standards. I'm just going to leave that blank for the moment. We don't need to select anything here right now, but that's a feature that's available. What's important, however, is I have the right cost codes here. In this deployment, we have a number of different cost structures, and I'm reporting against my post-contract. So I want to make sure that that's selected. And the rest of this is just, you know, my default Australian dollar currency. GST is going to apply. And then, you know, payment terms, these payment terms should reflect whatever the contract payment terms are. You know, if it's 60 or 14 or 15 or whatever it is, I'm just going to leave that as 30 days for the moment. Not really critical to what we're doing today. And once I'm happy with all of this, I hit save. And I have created my contract, and I'm now drilled into a contract here, and I'm in the value screen of my contract. And as you can see, everything is blank. Nothing here. So what I need to set up here is my list of deliverables. So what I'm going to do here is put some deliverables in for each phase. So there's going to be concept design, schematic design, and detailed design. That'll do for the moment. So I'm just typing those in, hitting tab to go down the list. Once I'm happy with them, I hit save. Now, again, with this, similar to what we did for the blank chart of accounts, I can have levels to this. So this might be concept design, but I want to add some more levels to this. So I can drill in to this one. Here's my concept design, and I can add additional items under this. So I'll say concept design drawings and concept design report. Save that. I go back up. Oh, hang on, didn't hit save. Got to hit save first. There we go. Go back up and you'll see now that that's put that as a level down underneath that. So I'm going to do the same thing again for schematic design. And then I'm going to do a similar thing for detailed design, but this time I'm not going to drill in. I'm just going to add them down the bottom here. And let's just call this DD package 1, DD package 2, and DD package 3. Oop. So now these ones, I've just added them to the bottom of the list here, and they're not indented like the others. But what I can do now is select them here, and you can see now I can outdent or indent. And here, if I indent them, that will push them under as a level 2 one under detailed design. So I've got level 1 and level 2 here. I've got my depth filter. If I just look at level 1, I'll see concept, schematic, and detailed design. Just look at level 2, I'll see all the level 2 items. If I go all, I get the whole structure, and I can also drill into that structure. So if I drill into detailed design, I get the detailed design deliverable and the items underneath that. Now, you can go down as many levels as you like. So it can reflect whatever the structure is that you're doing. So once I've got this, I can put in what the values for this are. And I'm just gonna, make some stuff up here. And again, I'm just hitting tab to go down the list. Entering those in. Once I'm happy with what they are, hit save. And you can see how those 3 levels are rolling up to level 1 there, likewise and likewise, and then I get an overall number here of, $1.95 million for this particular contract. Now, one more thing I've got to do at this point, which is very important, I've got to code this. And you'll see here, we've got select code. And what I want to do is find the architecture code. There it is, 400.1. Now, if I select this at level 1 for each of these and hit save, it applies that down the list. So there we are. I've created my list of deliverables. I've broken it down to the level of detail that I need to manage this contract, which can be as many levels as you need. It can be 1 line. Maybe that's all you need. Here I've gone for a little bit of a structure that reflects the design process and the outputs that they're going to be producing. And I would expect that this would align with whatever schedule they'd have to do with their pricing that we agreed on in their contract as well. So you do also have the option to import a list of deliverables, and that involves a mapping process from Excel. So if I just create another contract quickly, which I'll just call and separate from the other one. If I click on import, I get this paste Excel data here. And what I can do is I can pull something out of Excel, and it doesn't even have to be in this format. This is the format from Unify that I just did for the contract we just created, but it doesn't have to be. This could be an Excel that's been sent to you, that a contractor or consultant has priced up what they're doing, and you've asked for it in Excel, so you can just import it straight into Unify. The one thing you do need that may not be in their spreadsheet is this level here, because Unify needs to know what level each of these deliverables is to understand what are the headings and what are the detail. So I just copy that. And here I just do Control V, and then I map it to the relevant information in Unify. So this one maps to the level. This one maps to the description of the deliverable. That maps to the amount. If you've got, rate-based things, you can map to those. And here I could even map to the account code because I know it matches what's in Unify. And I click on validate and it will tell me if there's any problems with this. No, this is saying 10 rows validated successfully. I hit import and then close. And then I've imported that list of deliverables in. Now that's duplicated what I just did. So I'm just going to delete that. But you can, take information from Excel and basically paste it into Unify, map it to the fields in Unify and import it that way to get, contract data in quickly. So just for a moment, I'm going to go back to the costs module here. And you'll see now that we have some data happening, we've got our charts starting to appear in the cost module. And as we do more in the cost module over the course of these training sessions, more charts will appear. But for the moment, I'm just going to turn them off. And I'm going to put this to level 2. So does anyone want to jump out and suggest what may have changed since the we were last looking at this, when we were looking at it to see the change to our approved budget?
So
what can you see?
Uncommitted has created.
Yep. That's right, it has. We've now got an uncommitted value and a forecast here. And as you'll see, it matches the contract. And if we trace that back through, that's coming from the pending contract here. There's that 1.95 million from the architect's fee that's coming through at this level and creating a forecast. So I wanted to point that out because the way Unify works, when we code our contracts to our cost structure, Unify creates the cost report for you. So as soon as you're putting any information into the contracts module, it's feeding through into your forecast. So you get a live forecast being created by the system as you manage your contracts. Now, I go back in here into the contracts module, and you'll see here, though, that this is all nil, 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 nil. Original, approved, potential variations, that's all nil. If I turn on the charts, however, we can see that we've got something worth about 2 million. So the difference is that this is a pending contract. So it doesn't have an original contract value yet. So when I drill back into the contract and go to details here and change the status of this to active, and I go back to my value, and you'll see this status here is all changed to active. I go to my dashboard here, and I now have an original contract value. And I go to the costs module.
I'm sorry, I missed it. How did you change pending to approved?
Yeah, sure. So in the contracts module, I drilled into my contract. I went to the details view here and changed the overall status of the contract to active.
Great, thank you so much.
So then back into the costs module, and again, turn off the chart. That has now moved that value from pending contract into committed. So we now have this, we're now reporting this as a commitment. Before it was a pending commitment, now it's a commitment. Now, again, I just did that by changing the status. You can set rules in Unify whereby that can't happen unless it goes through an approval process. So you could have, you know, a process to issue a purchase order for this contract. That gets approved, that changes the status to active, which then reports it as an original contract and a commitment, or a contract approval process, whatever that might be that you need in your organization. Or you can just change the status as I just did in here. So now that we've created a contract, we're on to the last item on our agenda for today's session, which is creating a forecast. So I'm here in the costs module. I've already spoken about how, as we do things in the contracts module, that is feeding through here into my forecast. It's populating the original contract value, approved variations, commitments, pending contracts, possible and pending variations. So all of those columns are populated from the contracts module. And in the next session, we'll be looking at these ones, variations, and obviously approved variations as well, and how they flow through. Now, that leaves untended and remaining contingency, which you see at the moment are all nil. So we've got another view here in the subnav here, which is called forecast to complete. So I click on that, and you'll see here, this is a very similar view to what we were just looking at. But this untended and remaining contingency columns here are white, indicating that they can be edited. Now, I'm looking at level 2. Everything is at level 3, so I've got to expand it to level 3 here. And what I've got here are 2 options. One, which is to hit this auto button and have Unify calculate my forecast. And the other one is for me to put in that forecast manually. So both options work and are perfectly fine. When you use the auto forecast, which I'll do now, what's happening is that Unify is looking at what your approved budget is. It's deducting commitments and pending commitments from that approved budget and putting the balance of that into the untended. So what it's basically saying is that line by line, it's seeing whether you match the budget and giving you a balance in that untended column. So for instance, in here, when we're looking at the architect, we've got 1.95 as the original contract. Budget was 3.5 million. We've got an untended balance there of 1.5 or thereabouts, another 50 grand. So it's looking at that line by line. And the nice thing about this auto setting is that, again, as you put information into the contracts module, Unify recalculates this. And if you go over on any of these line items, that will report in your forecast. So for instance, if I was now to go into my contracts module and up this by throwing in, a bit more money here. Oh, didn't like that. There we are. So I've upped the value of this to 3.85 million here by increasing the value of the contract, just to show this to you. Come back in here to forecast to complete, go down here to my architect line item, and there's now no untended amount available because we've used up the full allocation. And in fact, we are over budget on this line item, which rolls up to being over budget overall. So it makes this stand out. Now, I'm just going to change that back because we're not over budget on this. I'll pull that back to being 100 grand. Back to my cost module, back into forecast to complete. And I have upped it just for the sake of upping it, but the point is to just show you how Unify is calculating this for you. Now it's doing the same thing with contingency. This project has a budget of 4.1 million of construction contingency. And in the next session, when we do variations, we'll look at how that contingency can be drawn down. But for the moment, that's being calculated for you. Now you can switch back to manual. And when I do that, the calculations that Unify has done stay here. Now this can be useful as well, because you may be looking at this saying, well, we've let the contract for the architect here. We're not expecting to spend another $500,000 on the architect. So I'm going to change that to 0 because I want to report that as a saving here. So until my budget gets adjusted down to reflect that, Unify will be reporting that we would spend that money. And if no, we're never going to spend that money, I could take that out here and, report that as a variance. Now, I'm not in auto mode. Unify is not calculating the rest of these things for me. So it's not going to keep recalculating these as I make other changes to the contract. But you can switch between the two to get the result that you need when you need to report your forecast. I'm just going to put that back to auto. And I go back to my dashboard here. And again, I'll just change this to level 2 so we can see it all in one go. And you'll see here, we've got a forecast here that's matching the budget because Unify has populated my untended and remaining contingency to give me those values there. And at the, there are no variances coming through at the moment. So thanks everyone for participating in cost management part 1. Just a quick recap that in part 2, we're going to get into contract administration. We'll play more in the contracts module. We'll see what it does in the cost module. We're even going to dip our toe into the issues module a bit more than we have today as well. See you in that session.